All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. It is Saturday, January 4th. We have a 9-game NBA slate to dive into in today's video. Like we always do, I'm going to dive into each and every one of these games. I'll give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about any other plays like player props that we like within the game as well. But as always, keep an eye down on the pinned comment. That'll take you to my final plays, so I'm actually rolling with myself. If that does interest you, all that will be down in the pinned comment. In terms of yesterday, I think we can take the womp to the chin here. We go 1-5. Our only win being the Jared Allen and Evan Mobley same game parlay, which is as juiced as Jose Canseco in his prime. Unfortunate night, and the Guppies definitely let me know about it in the comments, which if you put last night in a vacuum, I guess rightfully so, they let me know about it. A pretty bad night. We have not had one of those knockout punches from the books in a long time, and you know what? Last night was definitely one of it. So hopefully we do a little bit better tonight. But, you know, we've been so good in the NBA. I've been saying at some point the other shoe is going to drop. Hopefully this is as much as this shoe drops. But you can never guarantee anything. A bad night last night. But the ride of the day does pick up the vibes, does come through. We'll drop the cha-ching, we'll drop the crowd noise on the soundboard, anything to get those bad vibes out of here and bring in the good vibes. We had Ryan here with Alex Sarr, 14 plus points plus assists. He didn't need the combo stat. The dude had, 19 points last night, so shout out to Ryan for the ride of the day. I believe someone in the comments also said, hey, this isn't hidden, and he said, okay, fade me, using our tagline around here, right? Boom, right there. Speaking of which, look what else is in the background. Finally came in the 100K plaque. But anyways, Ryan hits the ride of the day. If you guys don't know what the ride of the day is, it's simple. Just use that hashtag ride of the day. Give me your favorite play. I jump on board with one person's play each and every day. Give you a shout out in the next video, win or loss, and give you a shout out on my X/Twitter, and also give you a shout out by the final plays over on the Guy Boston Sports site. If you win, we continue to roll with you until you've lost. Ryan, now 2 in a row. We're looking forward to seeing what he rolls with for his third day. Again, all of the plays need to be inside -150 so people can comfortably ride with them. No massively juiced plays. But one last thing before we do jump into this slate, guys. We do have our NFL Week 18 video out live now on the channel. Trey's video is out as well. We have tons of NFL content coming out here. H2H is out. My Week 18 picks are out. Tassos's picks. Trey's picks. We got a lot of NFL content as we round out the regular season of football. Go ahead and check it out. We've been on a scorcher, somehow, some way, on a scorcher during this NFL season. But let's jump into some NBA season action here. We're starting it off with Brooklyn taking on Philadelphia. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Here we go. So Brooklyn coming off of a win against Milwaukee, in which, honestly, that box score, 113 to 100, that final score, I should say, looks like it was a closer game. Brooklyn was crushing them that entire game. I think Milwaukee closed the game on I think it was like a 19-4 run or something like that, and almost won the game. Giannis missed a layup almost as time expired. So I'm saying this to give credit to Brooklyn. Like, they were actually rolling in that game. Philadelphia, 2 straight losses now. They've been on the road for 5 straight games, which is definitely tough for them. They haven't exactly been a tremendous road team. 47% of the games they've covered on the road this season. But one thing I will say is that Brooklyn, they've been a very good against the spread team this year, but it's actually mostly come on the road, which is funny enough. Now they're back at home. I think I'm going to look at Philadelphia with the caveat and the asterisk here that Joel Embiid plays. Right now he's listed as a game time decision, but Brooklyn has Clowney and Cam Thomas listed as game time decision. Bogdanovich listed as out. Cam Thomas listed as out. So a lot of injuries on the Brooklyn side of things. And even injuries aside, I do think that this is a spot in which we see obviously a Brooklyn team that's been playing well against the number and whatnot, but they've been playing kind of above expectations. I know they go out and get D'Lo and all that. That's great. But to me, this Sixers team at some point will round into form. And what I do like about this spot is that this season, Brooklyn actually has been shooting the ball fairly well. And obviously with D'Lo in there, they're going to shoot the ball even more and well to some degree too, right? 6th most points from 3 so far this season. But this Philadelphia team just outside the top 10 in preventing 3-pointers to opposing players. The way to get to Philly so far this year has been to try and get it to the rim, and that's not something that Brooklyn has been doing, as of late or just in general. On the season, the 4th fewest points in the paint. So for that reason, I am going to lean towards Philadelphia. You do have Philly, obviously probably looking forward to just being at home here. They have this last road game, and then they go back home for a little bit of a home stint. So maybe that could help you get to a Brooklyn side if you are there, because obviously, 5 games on the road. They've literally been playing on the road since Christmas. We're in the new year now, you know what I mean? Like almost 10 days that they've been traveling. So they're probably just eager to get back home, but I do think it's a decent spot for them. They played earlier this year. Philly won 113-98. That was a Philly team that didn't have Joel Embiid, but they did have Jared McCain in there, so I will say that. But they didn't have, I think Paul George and Joel Embiid missed that game. Right now, on the injury report, it looks like Joel Embiid should be the only questionable player outside of McCain who we know is out. So, yeah, I like the Sixers in this spot. 7.5 points, short's a lot, but I'm going to lean in that direction. I'm going to stick to it. In terms of the total, I do think that this one could go up and over. We've seen the Nets be able to push the pace, and I do think that there's somewhat of truth here to start looking at, I guess, this team with D'Angelo Russell. They're going to shoot a decent amount of threes. Now, they only scored 113 against the Bucks team, but we hit the over in that game, right? It was 221.5 for plus money. We had it as a final play at 223. They took, I want to say it was like 40 threes, and they hit over 30% of them. I do think that we could see some more threes coming from this Brooklyn team. Doesn't help them make it necessarily, but I do think it ups the tempo a little bit, because I do think Philadelphia can kind of clamp up the perimeter better than people think. So, yeah, I'll lean towards the over. It's a low number at 214.5. A lot of this hinges on Joel Embiid, whether or not he plays, right? And I don't have many player props in this one, just due to the fact that obviously we see a ton of, injuries. One thing I would say is maybe targeting Paul George, because I think that he could kind of fit the bill fairly well. This is a Brooklyn team that, doesn't necessarily cover the mid-range all that much. We see Paul George take a decent amount of mid-range outside of Joel Embiid. Last 10 games, he's leading the team in that. So, yeah, we don't have lines because, again, we're awaiting a bunch of injuries, but maybe that's a spot I would consider Paul George. But Paul George, I feel like, just plays around with people's money this season, right? Overall. But if Embiid doesn't play, I do like Paul George. I like him even if he does, but again, I feel like Paul George, let me know in the comments if you agree. I feel like Paul George has been so risky to roll with this season. Indiana taking on Phoenix. Now, this one I did kind of putt back and forth looking into it earlier this morning. This is a tough one. I think a lot of people might look at this and be like, well, Indiana, isn't trustworthy. And Phoenix, I guess you could also make the argument that they're not trustworthy, right? But Indiana at least has been playing some good basketball. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games compared to Phoenix, who's 3-7, both straight up and against the spread. So this one seems like it's just a front-facing, obvious Indiana spot, right? They're coming off of an underdog win against Miami. Again, they beat the Celtics within the last, 5 days or so. I would say not so fast. Like, I don't think it's an easy stamp of approval. Let's send off Indiana. I will say, to kind of counter what I'm saying, I do still lean Indiana, but this one isn't as just apparent to me as it was when I first looked at it. This is a team in Phoenix that has been shooting a lot more in the paint. They have not been scoring as much in the paint. If you look at their points per game in the paint so far this season and whatnot, it doesn't look all that tremendous. Dead last, but they're starting to score a little bit more in the paint. And this is an Indiana team that does struggle at preventing points in the paint. The thing that keeps me on the Indiana side of things is that you can flip it and say the exact same thing about Indiana against this Phoenix team. Indiana scores, or honestly, they do the same thing, yet they've been scoring in the paint. So it's almost the exact same thing as me being like, well, Phoenix shoots a lot in the paint, haven't been scoring, but they shoot a lot in the paint. Indiana can't really stop points in the paint, right? Indiana has been shooting a lot in the paint, but they've also been scoring a lot in the paint. So it's like that one little edge that I give them. They've actually been, converting when they get down there. And when I say in the paint, I do mean in the paint, not necessarily at the restricted area. It's very, very funny. In fact, if we jump into the dashboard here, I could show you. Up here, this is the last 10 games shot frequency or shot zone frequency, right? So where are they shooting on the floor offensively? By the way, guys, the dashboard, big news and big changes coming to this. Right now, it's available to YouTube channel members. We're going to be pivoting that and bringing it over to the Guy Boston Sports site so we can do a lot more with this, a lot more interaction, a lot more clean sort of getting this dashboard out. So not yet, just a little spoiler alert, a little teaser there, a lot more coming. But anyways, what I want to talk about here is the restricted area and in the paint. The restricted area is at the rim. The paint is obviously outside of the restricted area. Look at this. You have the second to last and the last in terms of frequency in the restricted area, but you have the number 1 team in the paint and the number 2 team in the paint here in terms of frequency. This is not making their shots. It's taking the shots over the last 10 games offensively. But over here, we look at the points in the paint defense. Both of these teams struggle at, preventing points in the paint, but only one of them is actually good at scoring points in the paint. So I do end up using that, just those two parts, to kind of lean towards Indiana here. This is a very low number at -2 as well. So yeah, give me Indiana -2, but you could see kind of how close that was. Like, both these teams play similar. Both are not very good at defending the paint. I could see the Suns having a decent offensive night tonight. But Indiana, for any reason I like the Suns, Indiana should be able to do it a little bit better. And Bradley Beal's listed as questionable, and Nurkic is listed as out. So even their big man down low, you put Mason Plumlee in there. He's obviously a viable, he's been around for a while, backup center, but I still think that Indiana should be able to score in the paint there. One thing I will say too, and I already mentioned, we'll get to the total in a second. I did mention, Paul George being risky and whatnot. Pascal Siakam is the guy that I would consider here as well. His point line is at 19.5. I really don't mind it. Last 2 times he's played Phoenix, one being this season, he's had 31 and 25 points. Over his last 4 games against them, he's averaging nearly 24 points per game. And why is that? Well, I just showed you the shot chart here, right? We can actually bring it back in to make this visual. Pascal Siakam likes to live in the mid-range and obviously that extended paint, right? Look at this. Both of those spots are some of the weaker spots from Phoenix. So I think Pascal Siakam could fit the bill of the type of player that should have a good game here. But unfortunately, again, 19.5 just seems really risky from him. But just like Paul George, I think he fits the bill and kind of fits the mold of the player. It's just kind of unfortunate, you're kind of in there like cringing as you press place bet. But all right, let's move on to the total here because we're spending a long time on this game. I guess we've rambled about both these games, but you know what? Hey, it is what it is around here. I don't mind an over. I've already kind of mentioned that I don't think this is going to be a very defensive game. You look at the paces of these teams. Phoenix, sure, they play slow over the last 10 games, 5th slowest pace, but Indiana can definitely up it. Like we just saw Miami have a high-scoring game with Indiana, right? 128 to 115. That was a 225 total. So I think that Indiana, especially at home, is going to be able to elevate and allow Phoenix to kind of play some decent basketball. And Bradley Beal, not playing or playing, sure, that's going to make a difference, but you give me Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, I do think Phoenix can play with somewhat of a fast pace. All right, Detroit is on a back-to-back here. They're 7.5-point dogs. This is one that I kind of got to a decision fairly quickly on, so maybe it does become a final play. I really do like Minnesota in this spot. They're coming off of a game in which they could have won, maybe not should have, but could have won against the Celtics, right? They're fairly healthy. Dillingham, Garza, and Mino are the only guys that are out for them today. They're going up against a Detroit team that may not have Simone Fontecchio, and Jaden Ivey still listed as Jaden Ivey is out. Obviously a broken fibula. It's just tough injury to see there. But he's not out for a year. He's going to be reevaluated in like 5 weeks, so I guess good for him. But overall, like, this is a spot in which they're missing one of their better players. They're on a back-to-back. Minnesota coming into this one only at 7.5 points. I do think it's an only. Last time they played was a while back, but Minnesota beat them by, I think it was 15 points. Now, that was last season. I say a while back. But overall, you have a Detroit team that defensively, they're going to struggle around the perimeter. Where does Minnesota like to score from? The perimeter. Okay, well, Detroit likes to shoot in the paint to some degree, right? Minnesota's actually become a better paint defense, and even if Detroit does decide to shoot from 3, you have one of the best defensive perimeter teams in the league in Minnesota. So to me, it's like this is a Minnesota game all the way. You have Anthony Edwards also coming off of a game in which he kind of put up a stinker against the Celtics, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you look at them, they lost by 3 to the Celtics. They did cover, but Anthony Edwards just wasn't really there. I mean, you look at his stats, 15 points. He was a -10 from plus minus, the biggest on the team in a negative number, right? 5 of 16, 2 of 9 from 3. Like, this screams bounce back spot for both the Minnesota Timberwolves as well as Anthony Edwards. And I do think Edwards kind of fits the mold here of a guy that can score against his team. Over 24.5 points is a lot. He hasn't hit that in 8 of his last 10 games, but I like the spot here against the Pistons. Now, to me, a pivot could be to take a peek at his 3-pointers made, which is at 3.5, but for plus 130. So 4 threes from him. Just give me 1 per quarter for plus 130. If this is in like the minus 115 range, I wouldn't like it, but I do like it at the plus money overall. I also would kind of consider either his points plus assists or his assists. Like, when you look at this Detroit team, like Hardaway, Cunningham, like, no one's going to be able to really cover Anthony Edwards one-on-one, so they must be throwing in and trapping him and everything like that, right? Like throwing the kitchen sink at him. And I think we'll get a lot of pick and roll opportunities as well, which obviously the Timberwolves like to run, but Detroit kind of stinks at covering. So this could be a good spot to target Anthony Edwards' assists as well. But I don't mind his points plus assists. 29.5 right now. gives him the opportunity to go out there and score a lot of points, but also dish a lot of dimes here. He's averaging 8 potential assists over the season in the last 10 games here, just about 7.5. So yeah, I don't mind his assists either. Total-wise, this is probably a spot in which I would consider team total over for the the Grizzlies for the Timberwolves, but I think I like Timberwolves and anything Anthony Edwards related more than that one. That's probably at the bottom of the list. Now, guys, I know we are talking NBA, but let's go ahead and just talk NFL for a quick second here. Bijan Robinson, a 0.5 total yards line over on Underdog. If you have not tried out Underdog yet, I'll tell you a little bit about it in a second, but you need to get on there. I've been having a blast on this app. It's on the computer as well as the phone. Super, super simple to get you some more action on the games. You get this free square, right? You also get a deposit bonus up to $1,000, which is absolutely crazy with the link in the description. It's also going to be in the pinned comment, whichever is easier. But what Underdog is, you take players, right? They have set projections, like this one's 0.5, but say a player has a 89.5 rushing yards. You can pick higher or lower, put it into an entry. You put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players into an entry. The more you win, the more you do get paid out. They have boosts and promos going on as of right now. Get on this as we head into the NFL playoffs. This is an amazing, amazing DFS app. It's available in most states as well. Take advantage of it. That link will be down in the pinned comment. Really, really enjoying Underdog as of late. Anything that I talk to you guys about on this show, on this channel, are apps that I use myself because I do really feel like these things help. Again, getting more action, getting more fun and entertainment on the game in different ways. A lot of books out there don't do, these specific promos and whatnot, but some of these DFS apps throw out amazing, amazing promos. So go ahead and check it out, guys. Again, that's Underdog. That link will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. Now let's jump back into these games. We've got 6 more. Milwaukee taking on Portland. Now, we've been, and I don't know if I want this title, but it's been the case so far this season, the Portland Whisperer. We can tell when they're going to keep games close. We can tell when they're going to win games. We can tell when they're going to get smoked. This is a spot in which I really wouldn't say is a good matchup for them. This is a spot in which, Portland does like to shoot in the restricted area, but Milwaukee has definitely been very good at doing that and preventing that on the defensive end. Whereas Milwaukee's been shooting a lot of threes, and that's where Portland definitely defensively lacks for certain. Now, we do have some injuries here. AJ Green, Chris Middleton, and Giannis all listed as probable, so I'm assuming they do play, but obviously things will change if they don't. But overall, I like the Bucks to lay the 12.5 points here. That being said, FYI, keeping it transparent here, I like the Bucks to lay the 12 points against the Brooklyn team a couple days ago on Thursday, and they lost the game outright by 3. So yeah, keep that in mind. I do think that this is a very good matchup for the Bucks, though I will mention that they played. They haven't played this season, so Portland hasn't seen Milwaukee. Portland overall, yes, they're keeping some games somewhat close. I mean, we had the 9.5 point spread against the Lakers, and they only lost that game by 8, right? So it's like, yeah. They're not winning games. They're keeping some games close. But if you lose to an Anthony Davis-less Lakers by 8 points, I think the Bucks can beat you, especially with their perimeter game, by 12, 13 points. So I like the Bucks in the spot, specifically, again, because of the perimeter. This may be a spot in which I look at Damian Lillard as well. I think that he could have a decent night from scoring, not necessarily just from his threes, because he does obviously like to get into the paint as well, but I start sort of the research with, okay, well, who's going to take a lot of those perimeter shots? Oh, okay, it's going to be Damian Lillard, in which Portland just cannot cover the line, but cover the 3-point line. But one thing here is that Portland allows guys to get to the line a bunch as well. So a Milwaukee team total or Lillard and Giannis, any of those guys that are going to get to the foul line a lot, definitely get a little bit of a bump in my brain in terms of, player props against them. So I like Lillard in this spot. I think that he's going to be able to anything he really wants to do. If he wants to play in isolation, if he wants to do pick and roll, that type of thing, I like him. So give me Damian Lillard, either his threes, points, or his points plus assists. His points plus assists right now is at 31.5. Yes, it's a little bit high, but again, this is a spot in which, I think many things that he does is going to really get right into that Portland defense. And you throw in the fact that, yeah, he's playing his old team. There's always that little added factor. Do you know what I mean? It's not the first time, but it still is a little added factor. So in terms of the team total over for Milwaukee, I think that they're going to be able to score a lot of points at the foul line tonight because Portland does seem to foul. So, points with no clock ticking off is definitely a benefit for Milwaukee. Miami taking on Utah. I take a big breath at the beginning of this one because I don't know, like, what do we, I want some feedback in the comments. What do we make of the Jimmy Butler stuff? So he's now been suspended for his comments and all that, right? And it's like, well, does that help the Heat? Like, are all these guys in the locker room being like, hey guys, screw Jimmy? Or is this like a distraction now? You know what I mean? It can go one of two ways. Either the Heat are about to go on a run, or this just crushes them for a little bit until he's traded. Like, do we need to get the dark cloud out of the locker room? Or is it now that he's been suspended and it's all aired out? Are they like, yeah, screw this guy. Let's play well while he's on the team. We don't care about him being traded, but now we know where we're at. I don't really know where I'm at with that. So this one, I almost want to, I'll sound the cycle alert alarm. I almost want to just fade the Heat right now. So I'll lean Utah due to, honestly, just that information. So this is not on the court stuff. I get it if you're like, no, I think that this could make the Heat kind of fired up. Sure, but to me, overall, like, I just don't necessarily see where, the Heat's minds are going to be at. So I want to see that before rolling with them. 8.5 points seems like it's a lot. Are they playing good basketball? Yeah, I'll give them that credit. Like, their bad loss was Indiana, but, maybe Jimmy Butler being off the floor is going to make them play better. Who knows? So this is a tough one. Let me know what you think of the Jimmy Butler situation in the comments. I'll lean Utah plus the points just because I have no idea where to come out on this one. In terms of the total, I kind of like the idea of the Jazz maybe upping the tempo and pushing this one, but it's not like the Heat have had the most efficient offense or anything. I will lean towards the over because I don't think the Jazz can keep this game close without pushing the tempo. So I'll do that. But again, I almost do have a chance of rolling with Utah plus the 8.5 points. I'm not going to lie to you, but it's solely based on like that feel, you know what I mean? The feel factor, which if you go with the feel factor for the life of your sports betting, it's not always going to work out, but sometimes you feel it. Watch, we're going to fast forward and all of a sudden tomorrow it's going to be like, well, the Heat won by 52 points. That's definitely a possibility. This was almost the final play last night. In the video, I leaned towards San Antonio. I didn't think that they'd win the game outright, but I liked them with the 7 points or 6 points in their back pocket, right? We didn't get there, and unfortunately, yes, they do end up winning it outright. We could have capitalized on that. Now, this is a spot, and I've been doing this all year long, and I do like the move, is that when one team wins one night, you look at the other team the next night, especially when they're playing each other on back-to-back situations here. Now, still, Aaron Gordon is listed as doubtful. He might not play. I don't mind that even still, like betting on Denver without him. Sohan looks like he may be returning to the lineup, which could be pretty big because this is a Denver team that doesn't really protect the paint all that well. And Sohan was a guy that was taking a lot of paint shots for them. So I will lean Denver in this one. I think that you can make a great case for San Antonio, especially looking at how the game played out yesterday and using all of my same, verbiage and stats that I gave you yesterday. You know what I mean? Like, clearly I'm not like all the way over here on Denver while San Antonio's sitting here and being like, they stink. It's like, this is the same matchup we saw yesterday. I lean San Antonio for a reason, right? But I do think because they just saw each other, because they're now flopping, flip-flopping home and away, I kind of like the spot here for Denver to kind of get theirs back. So Denver minus 3 points. In terms of the total, yesterday was a low-scoring game, 113 to 110. That was a that line close that I want to think it was like 240, which is also a spot in which we like the under, which we took 2 unders yesterday and they both lost. But then we leaned a bunch of unders and did hit on some of those there. Right now, I would say that this one probably ends up going over. I'm just taking the opposite of what we liked yesterday because these two teams just saw each other. Player prop-wise, I still would consider taking a peek at Devin Vassell. That was something we gave out yesterday. He ended up with 18 points. He had, I want to say, 3 or 4 threes. He had 6 assists, 6 rebounds. So Devin Vassell just fits the mold of a guy that can play well against this Denver team. So we'll see what his lines come out today. It's going to be tough because obviously it's going to be a little bit more juice than it bumped up than it was yesterday, but maybe he's got a good spot. I think his assist line was at 4.5 earlier for like plus 150. So that's definitely something I would consider. He's going to have a decent amount of usage here, and I think that this is going to be a spot in which, he can handle the ball, get to the mid-range, yes, potentially score, but when he gets to the mid-range, he's going to have a ton of assist opportunities, whether guys are collapsing on him or he's going to be able to just kind of dump it off to Wemby for an easy bucket. So I like his assists. Is he an age-old, dimer out there? No. I just think the game sort of fits him, and we saw it yesterday. All right, Chicago taking on New York here. This should, I say should be a good game here. We do have New York coming off of a game yesterday against OKC in which they lose by 10. They were winning for a decent amount of that game. You know what I mean? I think that was a massive, I didn't watch the game, just following it on my phone. That was a massive fourth quarter, right, for OKC. Like, they won the fourth quarter by like 20 points. So, yeah, New York definitely looked good, but then they kind of just slowed down a little bit, and that's not what you want to do against this OKC team. I hate to be the woulda, coulda, shoulda guy. I don't normally do that, but I loved Karl-Anthony Towns for plus money, his rebounds yesterday, right? This dumb brain doesn't press the button saying place bet, and he had 22. He almost doubled up his line. Hopefully some of you guys listen to that and take that. That's what's the beauty of these videos. I talk about what I like, what I don't like. If you guys want to use that information, if you don't want to use that information, all good. Sometimes we don't even use our own information. Anyways, back to this game here. We do have Chicago coming off of a loss against Washington. I'm sure they come out a little bit more fired up. They've been playing all right basketball. I think back to them beating the Celtics. They lose the next night, but they beat the Celtics. They beat the Bucks within the last, couple of weeks here. New York, though, that was their first loss in like 10 games against, OKC. So I do think New York's probably going to bounce back. You look at New York, though, on back-to-back situations so far this season, just 33% of their games they've covered in. And when Chicago does have a rest advantage, which they do here, they've covered in 83% of their games. So I almost want to say that this could be a Chicago spot. I think Chicago is going to be able to light it up from three, to be honest. But one thing that just keeps me away from it, and I do end up leaning towards New York. I know I want to get to Chicago, but I do end up getting to the New York side of things, is because New York loves to shoot in the restricted area. You think about Brunson, Towns, any of these guys, even Mikal Bridges can get in there, right? And this is a Chicago team that's now dead last in the league in terms of points in the paint allowed. So that's pretty damn massive to me. Again, I think Chicago is going to be able to light it up from three. I give them that credit. But when New York needs an easy bucket or a must-make sort of possession, I do think that they'll be able to have it. Even you look at the matchup of, Big Vooch versus Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't see him having the easiest time sort of. Say Karl-Anthony Towns gets the ball in the mid-range or whatnot. A pump fake and a couple dribbles by Vooch. Like, Vooch isn't, I love Vooch, right? And you guys should know that, and we do have a player prop on him and coming up in a second. But you look at him and it's like, well, he's not necessarily the quick lateral guy. Karl-Anthony Towns has been pretty good, and last time he played Chicago, which was this season, about 2 months ago, he had 46. So it's like Karl-Anthony Towns should be able to put up a decent number, score in the paint. A reason why I do like New York. Now, Deuce McBride is listed as doubtful, but looks like we will have Jalen Brunson, which could be obviously a big boost for this New York team. So give me New York minus the points. It kind of pains me because I was starting to make an argument looking into this earlier this morning for Chicago, and it came down to the threes, and I was like, yes, they should really be able to hit some threes. But that paint defense is just a blocker for me. Now, before we do get into the total, I'll talk about the play that I like, and it's going to be Big Vooch over 1.5 3-pointers made. We've given this out so many times this season because he's literally just been cashing it. 23 of 33, 70% of his games so far this year he has hit it in, 67% of his home games. He's hit it in 3 of his last 4 against the Knicks. The one this season, he did not hit it. He only had 2 attempts, but I don't think he's going to have 2 attempts. Big Vooch over the last 5 games here, averaging 6.4 attempts. He went 2 of 9 against Washington, and I already mentioned it, like this Knicks team doesn't cover the perimeter all that tremendously, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you might have, a decent paint defense, which might lead to Vucevic not exactly having the best of games, but what's he going to do? And if that's the case, he's going to be able to sit out there and hit his threes. Now, you think about, what other centers have done against them. They've looked pretty decent, to be completely honest. You saw Valanciunas look good. Now, we're not talking threes. We're just talking about center play, right? Valanciunas looked good against them. Vucevic, last time he played, I think he had 19 against them, even though he didn't hit his threes. Jared Allen played well. Evan Mobley played well. And this is a pick-and-roll spot for Vucevic, in which he loves to pick and pop. In fact, 25% of his points come off the pick and roll. That's a weakness of this Knicks defense. So I don't expect him to roll to the hoop. I do expect him to be able to bounce out and have some pick-and-pop spots. And 2 threes from him seems like it could be a good spot. Now, his points line is still at 18.5. If you don't like the 3 and you're more of like, oh, well, I just want to trust him, I do think he'll have a good offensive game again. Again, last time he played them, 19 points. The time before that, 29. The time before that, 26. He could still have a good game, but I just think the Knicks defense down low has been getting better, right? In terms of the total here, if I think the Bulls do get theirs from 3, and I think the Knicks are able to score at will down in the paint, I think I have to lean towards the over, even though that number at 233 is pretty high. Warriors taking on Memphis here in this one. Not exactly my favorite spot. I do have a lean. It's going to be towards the under. We cashed an under in this game last time, and it was because the Warriors barely did anything. I think Steph had like 2 points. Memphis scored over 140 in that one, so I'm a little weary to do that, especially with Golden State a couple days ago dropping 139 on the Sixers, right? So yeah, a little bit weary to take an under, especially when we rolled with Memphis and Sacramento's under yesterday, and they absolutely soared over. We took under 242.5, which I thought was a good line. 133 to 138 was the final. So that's a tough one, but that is where I immediately go. You think about the Warriors. Yes, they've been up and down. They've been struggling, but they still are a very good points in the paint defense, which is where Memphis has been liking to score their points. And even if they do take it to the outside, Golden State is still a decent defense out there. You look at no rest situations for Memphis, which they are in a back-to-back. It kind of pains me to see that they've hit the over in 80% of those games. So kind of tough there. But overall, I like the Warriors defense to at least somewhat show up. Like, yes, the Warriors have been kind of crappy, but their last few games here, Philadelphia 105. They allowed Cleveland just 113. They allowed Phoenix 105. Clippers 102, the Lakers, and this was at Golden State, right? 115, 111, 103. Like they've been having teams have some trouble scoring against them. The last big game they did allow a bunch of points was this Memphis team back in mid-December. So the under is going to be my main lean. And again, by the way, no Ja Morant, right? So it's like I should have probably mentioned that right off the rip. Like that's still a big deal, but at the same time, Memphis just scored 140 plus without Ja. But overall, I like the spot for them. There's no real defensive weakness, even with how the Warriors have been playing. If I had to give a spread pick, which I don't really love this matchup, like I said, I think I would lean towards the Golden State. Like they got pantsed, absolutely pantsed against this Memphis team last time they played. You can't sit there and tell me you don't think that they're going to have some revenge, and now they're at home, and especially thinking about them coming off a big win against Philadelphia, right? They've now won 2 of their last 3 games. They haven't been playing good basketball. This seems like it's a great spot to be like, this team smoked us last time, and quite honestly may have started our like up and down roller coaster of a ride, or at least capped it off. Now they have the opportunity on their home floor, which they're in Memphis last time, to kind of right the ship, now beat a team that already beat them, and sort of capitalize on some momentum, winning 2 of their last 3 games. So I think this is a good spot for Golden State. It's funny, I say that this is a matchup I don't like, and the more and more I just now talk to a camera, not even another person giving me feedback, I'm kind of like, good point, maybe we make that a final play. I'm a lunatic. I don't have any player props that I'm really loving in this game, though. All right, Atlanta taking on the Clippers here. Atlanta, 7.5-point dogs. Kind of makes sense, right? They're sitting here coming off of a back-to-back game against the Lakers, in which they lost last night. Atlanta was playing good basketball. They still kind of hover, right around that 500 mark. The Clippers, they were also playing good basketball. Now they've just looked a little different, I guess, in a sense. Now they've had some injuries, right? James Harden looks like he is going to play today, so that's going to be big. But overall, this is definitely a tough one now. Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, not on the injury report right now, but those are obviously guys to watch, as we've seen both of them either be sick or get late scratch and that type of thing. Last night, they both did end up playing. Trae Young played, and I think he had, 30-plus points, right? Jalen Johnson. They're like the only 2 guys that really contributed offensively against the Lakers last night. This is a spot in which if they didn't contribute last night against the Lakers, I almost sit here and I'm like, well, that's going to be tough to contribute into Clippers, a better defensive team in the paint, where I would have thought like Johnson would have had a great game and that type of thing. So kind of a tough spot here to like Atlanta, other than the fact that we're looking at 7.5 points. Like, isn't that a little bit too much, right? Like 7.5. This Clippers team has been kind of up and down. I think I lean towards Atlanta. I don't think that they win the game. I will say that. I think this Clippers team is going to be able to slow things down and kind of finishing it out at the end. So I think Atlanta just keeps this one within 7 points. But to be completely honest, on a back-to-back, don't necessarily love that. Atlanta on back-to-backs this season, just 33% cover rate, which isn't all that great. The Clippers sitting there with obviously a rest advantage. The last time they played was a couple days ago, and they, with rest advantages over teams, have covered in 63% of games. But to me, this is a team that, Atlanta still may have some some success at scoring in the paint. They are a better 3-point shooting team as well. The Clippers, bar none, are a better defensive team, both in the paint and from 3. But overall, this Atlanta team, if they do kind of get moving, get hot, start the game out well, I think that they can keep this one to 8 points. So yeah, I'll lean towards Atlanta. No real player props that I'm absolutely loving in this spot. I think that this is a Clippers team that, can win games, and just kind of lacks the pull away speed in a sense. Like if this is a cop chase and all of a sudden it's like, please pull over, and they go and hit their pedal to the metal, and it's like, you're in a Volkswagen Jetta, dude. Like, yeah, you can play some defense, but you ain't pulling away from us. You know what I mean? I'm probably jinxing the hell out of it, but whereas the Hawks do have that kind of go off ability, so if they need to, they can get hot. Does that make sense? So give me the Hawks. I did already kind of lean over under, but that's just because I think that's where the Clippers kind of come into play. Like even against that OKC team, using that as an example, right? It's like the Clippers did not stay in that game, but what did they do? They were allowing themselves, I guess, in a sense, to stay in their same rhythm. Like they didn't try and push the pace and catch up to the Thunder. They were able to keep that game low scoring, and that was only a 216 total. So I could see something happening here as well. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button as well. Again, big things to come with the dashboard. Very, very excited to kind of bring members to the Guy Boston Sports site. Overall, we'll still have obviously the members here, and we'll have some videos that are members only and whatnot, but the dashboard and a lot more tools that I think are valuable and sort of can help everybody, because again, there should not be any secret sauce. It's like, if I can find something, why not tell you guys so that we could all kind of win together, right? Nothing is like a black box out here, but a lot of cool stuff to come over on the Guy Boston Sports site. So go check it out, GuyBostonSports.com. Check out the store, GuyBostonSports.com/store, and everything like that. Yeah, catch you guys in the next one, right? Peace out.